So for those who won raffles in the first breakout session, go ahead and shoot us your email address in the chat.
Yep. My winner already posted. So
Oh.
congratulations, Sarah, winning $50 gift card.
Thank you so much. That's pretty exciting.
My winner posted too. Amy Mick won
Yes, there,
a
I won
womanhood
again.
code, $25 gift card.
Yay.
Thanks, Amy.
All right. Sungmi, do you want to go ahead and get started? Okay.
Of course. I was just having so much fun. I forgot about what we need to do. So here we go. I'm queuing up slide for you, ladies and gents. All right, so we just did our get to know networking, which was awesomely fun. And welcome to Womanhood Code Chicago International Women's Day. These are agenda. We just did a networking. I'm going to go through a quick intro, and then I'm going to hand it off to Blanca, and there's another raffle. And then Karen will be introducing our keynote speaker. So with that note, thank you so much. All of those prizes that you're going to get, these are our sponsors. So thank you, our corporate sponsors. Let me see. Oh, I need to plug it in our next Tech Talk event. So this is already in Meetup, and it's happening April 13th, which is a Tuesday, 5 to 6 in Central. So if you are beginner on any of the mobile development, or you're transitioning from Java to mobile development, or you just want to see how the new languages look like, whatever it is, this is open to all of you. So feel free to join. It's in the Meetup invite. And I'm going to share our Womanhood Code vision. So a world where women are representative as a technical executives, founders, the VCs and board members and software engineers. Those are our vision. And our mission is inspiring women to excel in technology careers. And if you think about how many women in tech throughout the world, we have 230,000 women in tech around the world. If you are interested in finding out more about our network, and you can go to womanhoodcode.com/networks. And again, I just mentioned to you, join a future event, Womanhood Code Chicago hosting, and that's the link. I'm going to just stop sharing, and I'm going to share a couple of links, which is the Womanhood Code Chicago, our website link, as well as a meetup link where you can find all the upcoming events. So code of conduct for Womanhood Code. Womanhood Code is an inclusive community. And let me just move out this screen here. We do not tolerate discrimination or harassment of any of our members in any form. So if you want to learn more about our code of conduct, you could visit womanhoodcode.com/code of conduct. Let me introduce to you Womanhood Code Chicago directors. There are 5 of us, starting with Ann Young, CTO, Northwestern Mutual Wealth Management, Blanca Roman, Agile Program Lead at Capital One, Karen McDonald, IT Director at ABIV. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to practice one more time. AV. Sangbi Naylor, Agile Portfolio Lead at Capital One, that's me. And lastly, but least, Andrea Chang, VP at Adagi Technologies. And actually, I need to stop at this point, and I need to hand it off to Blanca for another raffle.
Yes, as Sugmi had called out, we've got some amazing sponsors. And so the next raffle we actually have is a gift card. It's a $50 gift card at Equilibria. And Equilibria is a woman-owned business. They sell a bunch of really neat CBD products. So check them out. I'll actually post the link to their website here on to our chat. And the winner of that particular raffle is going to be Drum roll. All right. We are going to give that to Brenda Caroshino. So Brenda, if you can throw your email address in the link in the chat here, we can get you the information to get you your gift card. And then our second raffle for this time around is a Women Who Code shop gift card. So as somebody had called out, Women Who Code is an international organization. And of course we have our own swag shop. So $25 sponsored here by our Women Who Code director community. And the winner of that is going to be, I have Sue. Sue, if you can post your email in the chat there as well, so we can get you your Women Who Code swag. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Karen.
Wonderful. Can you guys hear me okay? Great. Okay, well, it's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Eva Marie Shaneborn. Eva Marie serves as the Vice President of Investment Products and Services and as President and CEO of Northwestern Mutual Wealth Management Company. She's responsible for the investments and product offerings of the Wealth Management Division, as well as strategic planning, profit and loss, product development, and management. Her career began at American Enterprise Life Insurance Company, and from there led her to American Express Financial Advisors and Ameriprise Financial in various roles, each taking on increasing responsibility and leadership. Her experience spans annuities, brokerage, advisory, securities-based lending, money movement, and operations transformations. She has over 20 years of financial services experience. She's spent her career advocating on behalf of clients and advisors, bringing the best talent together across large matrixed organizations to ensure the product investment offerings are economically viable, compliant, and competitive. She holds a BS and an MBA from St. Cloud State University. So please join me in welcoming Eva Marie.
Thank you so much, Karen. Good evening, fellow women leaders, future women leaders, and allies. It's an honor to be here today speaking with you on this 110th year of celebrating women's achievements and our progress towards equality. Today, I encourage you to choose to challenge. Choose to challenge for your rights, for dignity, for respect, for your sister, daughters, mothers, and for each other. Choose to challenge. Today, I'd like to reflect with you on how far we've come, the work we still have to do, and I'd also like to share a little bit about my career journey that I hope you'll find helpful in shaping yours. This year, we find ourselves in a very unique place and time, the one-year anniversary of the global pandemic, which has had a tremendous impact on people worldwide, and especially women. Here in the United States, more than 2.3 million women are out of work. This is the lowest labor force participation rate in 3 decades, according to the National Women's Law Center. Unfortunately, women often bear the brunt of the family responsibilities. Think about it: primary caregiver for children, perhaps aging parents, resident cook, cleaner, coach, and even teacher. The village that so many people rely on for help has dwindled over this past year, not to mention the full-time job responsibilities for those who are still employed. Thank you to all of the frontline caregivers, those running households and essential workers who are guiding us through this pandemic. We honor you and we appreciate you. Women in highly visible leadership roles is a sign of progress. And in the United States, we've made strides towards equality on a number of fronts, within our government and within business. Let's talk about how far we've come and use some numbers for perspective. Only a decade ago, 13% of our Congresspeople were women. 2 decades ago, only 2 women were CEOs of Fortune 500 firms, and men held 80% of board positions just 4 years ago. Today, counting both the House of Representatives and the Senate, 144 of 539 seats, or 27%, are now held by women. This year, history was made as Kamala Harris became the first woman, first Black, and first South Asian American to become Vice President of the United States. Janet Yellen became the first woman Treasury Secretary. 1 decade ago, government leaders consisted of 13% women. Today, 27%. Progress, but let us not forget, women make up 50% of the United States population. During the first quarter of 2021, 41 women are leading Fortune 500 companies. That means 8% of the Fortune 500 companies are led by women. Notable recent appointments to CEO are Jane Fraser, CEO of Citi, Roz Brewer, CEO of Starbucks, and Thasanda Brown Duckett, incoming CEO of TIAA Craft. 2 decades ago, only 2 women were CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Today, 41 women, or 8%, lead Fortune 500 companies. Again, progress, but remember, women represent 50% of the US population. Equilar's new Gender Diversity Index, released last week, reports that 23% of all board seats on the Russell 3000, which tracks the performance of the 3,000 largest public US companies, are held by women. 23%. 50% of the United States population are women. I like to think you become what you think about most. Having strong female role models is an important step towards creating aspirations for what is possible in the future. To make the future different than the past, we have work to do. By continuing to build on these numbers, 27% representation in Congress, 8% women leading Fortune 500 companies, and 23% representation on boards, young women can envision a future where they're not judged by their sex, but by their qualifications. As it stands today, women have to work harder than men. Women need more qualifications than men for the same roles. Women are expected to be highly competent, as well as cordial and caring. As a male colleague recently said to me, men are promoted on potential, women on accomplishments. This is not equality. This does not have to be in a future which we can build together. Each one of us can choose to challenge for a better tomorrow. I want to share a story with you. At a financial services women's event, a male leader recently opined, "It's really hard to find women qualified for our positions." He said those words to a conference room full of women who were qualified as a precursor to being invited into the room. Listening to these remarks as a well-qualified woman in the industry for over 20 years, I wondered, why has this firm not approached women leaders to build their recruiting pipelines and extend their networks? Why not ask women in leadership positions for thoughts on recruiting more women? These questions give me pause and make me question this firm's commitment. The useless rhetoric of "we are trying" needs to end, and we need to build real, tangible pipelines of talent, getting to know diverse people and them getting to know us. We have to make space for this work. And as women leaders and allies, we must commit to making this talent pipeline a priority. Women leaders and allies, today I challenge you to spend 1 hour a week working on your pipeline to move these numbers. 27% of Congress, 23% of board executives, and 8% of CEOs. These numbers must be more representative of our population. Now, let's take a little trip in the history machine of my career to pluck out a couple gems that might be useful to some of you as you navigate your career journey. I, like many of you, began my career working in the service industry for tips as a server, slinging steaming hot pancakes and searing hot coffee. Anticipating my clients' every need was utmost on my mind. I worked diligently to ensure all of the clients in my section were well cared for. Their water glasses would never run dry on my watch. I had all kinds of hustle. No matter where you are in your career, deciding what you stand for and what motivates you is critical. Of course, I was rewarded for my passion for caring for my clients, both then and now. The hustle I had then is the same hustle I have now. It's just directed differently. What you're passionate about and what you focus your energy on will drive your personal brand. Very early on in my career, I realized that my brand would be critical to the leader I would become. Early in my financial services career, I decided I'd set out on an expedition to understand my brand, as reported by key influencers. I sent an email to a group of people asking them what 3 words they would use to describe me. I had lots of great responses that were very insightful, but the themes boiled down to smart, driven, and funny. Now, I had not actually earned smart and driven yet because I'd only been with the team a short amount of time. But in that time, I had made an impact as a temp. I knew if I was to become a leader in the organization, I would need to evolve my brand to strategic, decisive, and kind. It's critical to know your brand as a leader. So, number 1 is know your brand. Know your brand not only with the people above you, but at every level of the organization. Next, I sought out people who I perceived as having the brand I aspired to. Let me say that again. I sought out people. No one came to me. I reached out to people who didn't know me and asked for help. And you know what? They helped me. Just as you would if someone asked you for help. Number 2 is ask for the help that you need. That help may come from women or it may come from men. I have found great mentors in both. While we would all like women to be great role models, we would like them to help by pulling us up. Some women and men are not equipped to do so for a variety of reasons, a scarcity mentality, or they just don't have the ability to nurture talent. So while you may want a woman mentor, you may need to seek out a male ally who has the capacity and the vision to help you to achieve the success that you so deeply want to earn. Once I had gathered up these inspirational leaders who were invested in my success, I had established my board of directors, people whom I admired, who exemplified the leadership attributes I knew that I lacked. I met with them regularly. I listened to them. I asked them questions. I cared very deeply about them. I created connections. One of my allies today calls me fearless. I think because I'm not afraid to ask for help or say when I don't know. The other side of asking for help is getting stronger, which helps me create a power base I can leverage to pull others up. As a leader, you need to understand that everyone is on a journey, but no one has all the answers. The relationships and connections I nurtured with my personal board are strong and growing. Every one of these people challenged me to be the best version of myself while also having the courage to call me out when I was failing. Equally, I fill their cups by recognizing them when they're doing the things worthy of praise and recognition. Number 3 is always take the time to lift others up. Make it your mission to be someone who amplifies the goodness of those around you, creating connections between like-minded people. It's taken me many years of consistent investment in my own brand to achieve strategic, decisive, and kind. Every day, I work to earn that brand. Every single day. Know your brand, ask for the help you need, continuously build connections, and lift others up. Now, you might be thinking, if it were just so easy as knowing my brand, asking for help, and making connections, well, we'd all be where we want to be. I'm here to tell you it's not that easy. Those are the table stakes. Now, the next things you'll need to do may make you uncomfortable. You're going to need to take risks. I had two significant inflection points in my career where senior women pulled me up. When I was a manager, I was recruited to a role as a result of work I had done in partnership with another team in the company. I was offered this lateral role in a new organization, and at the exact same time, my current leader offered me a significant pay raise. I was torn. Here, this guy had gone to bat for me to get me more money. The senior woman leader in the competing business unit called me and said these words: "You need to do this for your career." And she was absolutely right. That woman leader is still my friend, mentor, and guide to this day. Having the ability to assess situations for what they are comes with time. Deeply understanding what you stand for, what you are passionate about, and the vision for your career is critical. You will be offered many opportunities in your career. Knowing which ones will help you build your career versus those that are poison candy is something you'll need to reflect upon. I have turned down promotions. I have turned down job offers. I have turned down more money. Be selective on where you spend your time, energy, and effort. My dad once told me when I was mourning a breakup, boys are like trains. There'll be another one arriving in a half hour. And he wasn't wrong. The same is true for job opportunities. You need to assess whether the opportunity is actually going to bring you closer to the destination or if it's a distraction from your mission. The other important inflection point in my career was thanks to my now retired friend, Sarah, who was an executive vice president of wealth management. Sarah would send notes to the department now and again. Early on in my career, I'd worked very closely with another EVP in a smaller organization. I was familiar with executive level communications. On one occasion, Sarah sent a note to the department. I responded back. I wrote, "The note was good, but it could have been better if you would have added X, Y, and Z." Looking back on it, this was a huge gamble on my part. There were 4 levels between mine and Sarah's. She could have literally put me on her do not call list and my career could have ended. My intent was good, but I did not have a relationship with Sarah. Thankfully, she wrote me a note back and said, "That's a great point. I wish you could do this for me all of the time." To which I replied, "You could make that happen." And she did. As my career progressed, I've taken other risks too. One of my superpowers happens to be bringing people together to solve big, complicated, multidimensional enterprise problems. You can imagine that this is a valuable skill set in most big companies. What I learned was that for me to expand my span of control, it would be necessary for me to say no to leading large cross-organizational efforts and yes to leading new business lines. How did I come to this conclusion? By watching the men around me. Be careful that your superpower does not become your brand and take up the space you need to increase your influence and ascension. My mentor, Nancy, helps me evaluate each opportunity to ensure it aligns with my long-term vision. Another superpower I have is Andrew. Andrew is my partner in life. I could not do what I do every day on behalf of over 1 million clients, 21,000 field members, and our talented home office leaders and teams, if not for Andrew. Andrew is my amplifier and my consigliere. He helps me to think about what I'm thinking about and how to be a better leader. I enjoy watching Kamala and Doug as a team for this reason. Andrew and I are a team. I can focus on what it takes to win in the very competitive wealth management space because Andrew, in addition to his professional career, is also focused on making our lives work at home. From meeting with our financial advisor, lawyers, accountants, to home projects and travel arrangements, Andrew is on top of all of the life stuff that has to happen. Food is the one responsibility that I still own, as I prefer larger menu than pizza and bagels. What's most interesting for us as a team is when people assume that he's the breadwinner in our partnership, particularly salespeople, car salespeople, realtors, builders. I'm admittedly shielded from much of this in my life, but when I encounter these stereotypes and biases, I am still surprised every time. Every time. I need to find my words to tell them that I am a leader in a large financial services firm. I don't do it for my ego. I do it for every woman who comes behind me. I have lots of funny stories, like the women who do my hair and nails during non-COVID times, of course, speculating that I am a high-priced escort. I mean, clearly, lots of travel, dressing well, going to meet my most important clients. I mean, what else could I possibly be doing for a living? Man, my friends and I, we laughed and laughed. But really, it's not funny. It really isn't. It's our reality until such time that enough women are in leadership roles that people in our society get exposed to women as powerful, visionary leaders who play important roles in running the world. Until we improve the outcomes on our key metrics to look more like 50%. I consider myself very fortunate and privileged. I have a graduate degree. I am childless by choice. I have a great life partner. I get to take risks that other people may feel they cannot take for fear of retaliation, for fear of their livelihoods, or for fear of being judged. I call on each of you as leaders and as allies to create an environment free of fear, to unleash the potential of those within your organizations and within your communities. My mission is to choose to challenge in order to create a world where all people, regardless of sex, race, or background, are able to achieve their human potential based on their qualifications, not stereotypes, not biases. When we can say the success you have is the success you have earned. So what can you do? Spend 1 hour a week working on your talent pipeline. Know your brand. Ask for the help you need. Create connections. Lift others up. Take risks and pick your partners wisely. Today and every day, I encourage you to choose to challenge. Choose to challenge for your rights, for dignity, for respect, for your sister, for your daughters, for your mothers, and for each other. Choose to challenge. It's been an honor to be with you here today. Andrea, I'm turning it back to you for the rest of the program.
Thank you, Eva Marie, for that powerful message. I had so many good nuggets out of that. And first of all, I have to say that the complete badassery in this Zoom room is absolutely insane. I am honored and I'm humbled to be in the presence of all of you. I'm even more excited to introduce our panelists for this evening. But before that, I'm going to turn it over to Blanca for a few seconds so she could do our next raffle.
Awesome. Yes. So we have a Women Who Code 1 hour coaching with the Women Who Code directors. And that is going to Ayer. Ayer, are you out there? Am I saying your name incorrectly? Sorry, let me take a picture. And then if you can go ahead and post your email in the chat. And then our second prize here is an Akira $50 gift card. Akira is a woman-owned business. And that is gonna go to Isabella Calderon. Isabella, will you chat us your email? Thank you all. Turning it back to you.
Awesome. All right, we're going to move into the panel section. Please feel free to use the chat function to ask any questions. We do have moderators out in the audience who will be taking questions for our panelists. We will also be reserving a little bit of time at the end for any questions as well. So first of all, I will start with Ann Young. Ann Young is the Chief Technology Officer of Northwestern Mutual Investment Product Services and VP of Engineering for Field Technology, where she currently heads technology teams in imagining and building the next generation digital solutions to enable 7,400 plus field force members. Ann is a senior technology executive and business strategist with over 19 years of experience in various industries. Ann holds a bachelor's degree in computer science and mathematics from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. She's also director of Women Who Code's Chicago Network, among other notable board positions. Ann lives in Milwaukee with her husband, her daughter, and fur babies. Rebecca Miller-Webster is an impactful, inclusive, and collaborative engineering leader, author, mentor, and conference speaker. She is currently an engineering manager at Venmo and founder of Right Speak Code, a nonprofit elevating technologists of marginalized genders. Rebecca has spent almost 20 years building software professionally, transforming teams and cultures, and mentored, taught, or advised thousands of engineers. Rebecca enjoys playing guitar, singing, and hanging with her pug, Eleanor Roosevelt. Lila Jones is the head of corporate sales, North Central US Google Cloud. Known for her authentic leadership, Lila leads a team that brings the best of Google to solve growth challenges for strategic customers across multiple verticals. Lila is committed to lifelong learning. She holds an MBA from Suffolk University and serves as an adjunct professor focused on change management at Suffolk and also at Northwestern's Medill School of Journalism. Lila is the proud mom of 2 children and cherishes time spent abroad vacationing in Spain and recently achieved a lifelong goal of summiting Kilimanjaro. Yvonne Milano is the VP of Center Enterprise Program Management Office for Kellogg's. In her role, Yvonne works very closely with the Kellogg's Executive Committee to take strategy to action to results. Yvonne has 20 years of diverse leadership experience and started her career as a web developer. Yvonne holds a bachelor's degree in computer science and completed the executive development program at Harvard University. She's an advisory board member for Working on Womanhood and Gartner. Yvonne is an advocate for girls in STEM and has encouraged her own daughters to explore opportunities in this field. So welcome and thank you, ladies. And Eva Marie, I invite you to share your thoughts with us as well during this panel section. The theme of this year's International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. So every day we're faced with this ability to choose to challenge, be it by calling out gender bias and inequality or celebrating the achievements of women. From challenge comes change. So to the panelists, tell us about a time when you've chosen to challenge in your life. And Lila, I'll start with you.
So I will come off mute and say thank you so much for having me. Wow. When have I chosen to challenge change and challenges? That's something that I've had an opportunity to do as an African-American woman. It's interesting how different we realize the world than others. And so I always think about how my mother has prepared me in raising me to face challenge and change with my head up, my shoulders back, and a great attitude. So in different scenarios that I've had in my career, I've always started with that point of view of optimism. And that's really helped me get through some of the more challenging times that have not only required me to educate others on how to best react and how to show up in challenging times, but it's also helped me to stay very level.
I love that optimism as a theme. And Yvonne, how about you? How have you chosen to challenge in your life?
Hi, thank you for having me, Andrea. And I'm super happy. My daughter won one of the prizes. I'm sure she's still listening. She's on the call. You know, I had chosen to challenge many times throughout my career, but I think I'm going to pick my favorite one. I used to report to a CIO, and the entire leadership team was male. I was the only female. And he used to take his team every year for a retreat to do a strategy. And of course, there was always team building activities included in these trips. And so I got an email from his admin saying that they had booked a day at the spa for me, so that that I could do that after the strategy meetings. And I asked, what is the rest of the team doing? And she said, well, they're going to be golfing. And so I walked to my boss's office with a good friend, and he had no bad intention. He's still a mentor of mine. And I said, what makes you think I don't want to golf? I'm a terrible golfer, but he actually did let me join the team, and with a coach that helped me. He was my pair for golfing that day. And the next year we went fishing, and I went fishing with the team, and I was never sent to the spa. Don't get me wrong, I love the spa. So, but I really wanted to be with the rest of the team. So I took the opportunity to teach him that lesson.
That is that is wonderful. And the question is that why didn't they want to go to the spa?
I know, right?
Yeah. Right, Rebecca, how about you? How have you chosen to challenge?
Well, similar to Yvonne, I've chosen to challenge multiple times, but really early in my career, I worked at a lot of really small startups, which is really fun. But I often, either in the interview process or as soon as I started working, would say, hey, do you have a sexual harassment policy? Because the answer was almost always no. And almost always like, well, we don't really need one, like we're all close. And I was like, well, maybe we should talk about like what is appropriate behavior and what the process would be like if someone was uncomfortable. And so that was just like a small way to kind of kick off those conversations and get them thinking about the idea that like just because you're all friends doesn't necessarily mean that that everyone is going to feel comfortable with that, and how do we deal with those situations. So that's my example. I was young, and I don't know, sometimes I think it's stressful to challenge, right? But I think it made a difference and got people thinking.
That's fantastic. And Anne, how about you?
I feel like my entire career has been a challenge, but I would say mainly now, right? When I think about my role, I mean, I am at the table with a lot of financial advisors, and that's mainly men, right? And technology, that's been mainly men. So my whole career, it's been always thinking about not so much, I like how Eva Marie put it. It's like, I don't say the things that I have to say for my own pride, but it's really to be that voice and reset the stereotype. Like, and many times in my career, I've been confused for being the HR person or the marketing person, because I don't look like a engineer, right? That's not the that's the stereotype, that engineers don't look like me, or architects, lead architects don't look like me, CTOs don't look like me. So it's like, oh yeah, are you the HR person? The marketing person? Like, I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, and this is what I do. So I think it's important that we start framing that and challenge the stereotypes. So I think it's every day when I have a seat at the table, I make sure that comes through loud and clear.
Fantastic. So as we were planning this panel over a year ago, which we unfortunately had to cancel because it was literally the day before we went on lockdown, Anne had this epiphany that we would have a secondary hashtag. And that hashtag was your power narrative. And so what this is, and we all have one, and Eva Marie spoke very eloquently about our power narrative, but this is your story. This is your superpower. It's how you got from, where you are today, and it's the story that's yet to be written. So for our panelists, what is your power narrative? And I'll start with Lila, but Anne, since you were the originator of this hashtag, I can't wait to hear yours.
So yes, I will kick it off. It's such a great question too. I always think of my power narrative, and I think of the superhero that I think most represents me, and that would absolutely be Moon Girl. If you are a Marvel fan, then you've heard of Moon Girl. And she is known for being very creative and clever and like saving the world or getting her teammates out of really challenging situations. And so if I had to say what my power was, it would definitely be around being courageous and just having a tenacity to move forward and find a way. Just earlier today, I was listening to one of my mentors talk about being a strong woman and what that's like and how we are built to deal with challenge and how we show up as, you know, women who can accomplish anything. And so when I think of really that power narrative, at the core of it is being authentic and being willing to connect with people and enjoying that connection with people. Between the tenacity and the connection with people, I feel is how I've been able to really break through different doors and break down barriers and have an impact. That's it.
That's fantastic. Now, Moon Girl is one that I'm not familiar with, so I'm going to have to look that one up. I love that though. Yvonne, how about you? What is your power narrative?
You know, it's funny. I learned so much from what Eva Marie was sharing, and she talked about being fearless. And I when I think of my power narrative, I think of my dad because it relates to mentorship and kind of like the first person I thought he was a Superman because he wasn't afraid of taking risks, which many females are afraid of taking risks. So he showed self-confidence in everything he did, and he kind of passed that on to me. So, you know, you can do whatever you want. You can, you know, you can be whatever you want to be if you work for it. He told me to be the confident female leader I am today, to speak up when I disagree with something. I still do that today. I think when I reflect on asking people, what do they think about me when, you know, when they hear my name, what do they think about me? They speak about confidence and courage. And I think courage is my superpower. And I do think it's a superpower that many girls, I know that I try to instill this in my daughters as well. It is what got me where I am today, is what let me take the biggest risk of my life, which was moving to the US right after college without even speaking the language. That is what I also try to instill in my team today. I know many of them are on the call, so they're going to relate to that.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. You know, the courage piece of it and the risk. And, you know, one thing, and I'll share with the audience too. So Yvonne and I have known each other for, I mean, nearly 2 decades, and so a long time. And one thing, Yvonne, that that stands out so acutely in a memory of you is when you would go to take English classes, and I just remember thinking that that is. It's so amazing, and I never really associated it as much with the courage, but now in hindsight, so much so. And that's something like I can't even remember what I did yesterday, but that memory of you and the strength and the courage to do that was something that just stuck with me for so long.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, and I can still picture the conference room and everything, and to see, you know, where you are today has just been just tremendous.
Thank
All
you.
right, Rebecca, how about you? What is your superpower?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I feel that it's really hard for me, but what I came up with was something I've been thinking a lot about because I've been working on writing a book, which I haven't told a lot of people. It's one of the things I want to do, but I'm moving forward with it. But the thing that I've been thinking a lot about through my career is sort of, I think I have an ability to look at a group of people and see the power dynamics that are going on, which I think a lot of women and other marginalized folks in tech probably learn how to do, right? Because just because someone's a manager, there may be someone who's been there a long time or their voice is more powerful. So getting into a group and understanding that, and then being able to take that and cultivate belonging in the group so that you can bring people along, so that your voice does help elevate and lift up the other people in the group who may not be speaking up for whatever reason. And I think as a leader, that then helps you bring the whole team along into the strategic vision that the business is having. So that's what I came up with.
That's fantastic. I'd love the ability to just see the dynamics in a room and just be able to make those connections, which, you have mentored and coached thousands of engineers, and that superpower, I'm sure, has come in handy. And Anne, the originator of your power narrative, what is your superpower?
I'm trying to remember even what inspired me to do that. I think it was really, I was looking at a lot of successful women. And, one day I just thought, gosh, there must be a story behind that. Like we go through a lot of challenges on a daily basis, right? But what is that power story that you pull on to really help you kind of get through it? And that was like my fascination, was like just asking women that I like that just really like inspire me, like what is their power narrative? And that's how I came up with that. But for me, when I thought about myself, I think it really is a lot of things, but the two things that always stood out was the grit and the focus. I think I am one of those people that when I'm set out to do something, it will get done. And that's because I am so gritty when it comes to getting something done and the focus that I put on it. And I am a practicer of, you have to write it down. Like if you write it down, it's going to happen. And someone asked me, so what are you doing to kick off your year? I'm like, I sound like a complete geek, but I'm writing down, like I'm revising my career plan and writing down what I want to happen this year. Like when I look at the end of 2021, what do I want to accomplish? And this is not, the goal setting at a company level, but this is my personal plan. And I don't let anything derail me. Like in a way, sometimes my husband says I'm just stubborn. I'm like, well, you can see that as a great sign of focus and grit.
Yes, that is fantastic. And I think that that's a valuable lesson for everybody too, is just to write things down. And once you see it and you can revisit it, it becomes more tangible. So that's fantastic. And I can definitely attest to the grit and focus. I have seen it from you. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about women in leadership, women in tech, and even Marie had a very good message. 50% of the population is women, but yet such a small percentage of women are in leadership positions. So we've all heard the statistics. Women technologists make up only 28.8% of the tech workforce today. The number is increasing. It is, but not fast enough. It'll take 12 years at this rate before women see equal representation in technology. So what do we, as women in leadership positions, need to do more of in order to accelerate this change? And Rebecca, would you be able to start us off?
Sure. I think in thinking about this question, I think that there's a couple different facets. I think one is just elevating, as Eva Marie said, elevating and sponsoring, if you haven't heard that term, which is not just giving advice in terms of mentorship, but really putting someone up for a promotion, advocating for them, those around you, and understanding that, as someone said, men are often promoted on potential and women are promoted on accomplishment. So how can you start to voice that they have this potential? So I think that's one thing. And then I think another thing that we all need to think about is sort of our own bias and the things that we've internalized, because of course we all have, right? And we know that women's performance reviews are evaluated differently. And can we as managers and leaders be aware of that when we're reviewing performance and thinking about other people's performance and giving feedback? And also that like we've come up in a context, like it gets a little better for each generation. And so that also means that some of the tools that we maybe had to use or hadn't had to harden ourselves against could not be the best advice for the people who are a little bit below us. And so where do we need to also shift with the culture as well? And I think in doing that, we're also modeling the behavior for the allies around us, for the other women who are coming up below us.
Great. And Lila, what are your thoughts about what we need to do to accelerate change?
It's interesting because I feel like we always talk about this in most of our panels, right? There's always the, what do we got to do, right? Or how are we going to make a change? Or how do we have an impact? Yeah. And it's interesting because I've given a lot of thought to this, and I've asked a lot of people and talked about what's worked and what hasn't. And one of the things that we are super committed to doing in the cloud organization at Google is making sure that our women have a seat at the table. How are we doing that? We're doing that by taking a very structured approach to sponsorship, because it's not happening, right? It's not. Even though we have all these sessions on here's how to find a mentor, here's the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, here's how you know what to do. That has not moved the needle based on the very data-driven, based on the data that we have. And so we are taking a more structured approach and saying, how do we make sure that the people who have positions of power, largely male, have a buddy, almost like a new hire mentor buddy, but that buddy is a high potential female that is coming along with them to their executive readout meetings, even if she doesn't have a role right away, is going to own some type of a highly visible project along with them. And that's an opportunity to let those women know that, A, you belong there. This isn't weird. You do, this is something that you can accomplish. And so that's been something new that we've been trying. And so far we've gotten really, really great responses, because I think that in order to change that metric and shorten that 12 years, we can't leave it to chance. The stats are not on our side. So that's something new and different that we're doing.
I love that. I love that. That is, that's actually fantastic. Is there anyone else? Anne, what are you doing at Northwestern Mutual in order to accelerate this change?
Well, I love what Lila just shared.
Yeah.
We may just have to steal that. Like, even Maria and I are going to go back and figure out how that's going to happen.
This is being recorded, so we're all going to go back and
we're going to steal that.
Fast forward to that.
I think some of the men would benefit a lot from that buddy system.
Totally.
But more on a serious, I guess, note is, I also this year, intentionally said that I'm going to choose to challenge to be an advocate. I am going to move from, all the language of coaching or mentoring. I'm going to be an opportunity creator. I'm going to be an advocate. I'm going to put women, especially on my team, on very visible roles, give them opportunities to broaden and grow. I think initially when I started as a leader, I had a hard time doing this. And I don't know why it was really hard, because I always felt like, well, what if the guys feel like they're not being treated fairly? But then throughout my leadership journey, I realized one thing is that, there are a lot of men in the room, championing for other men. There's only me. I have to hit this even harder than most men, because I have to kind of go more coverage, right? I have to champion for every guy that a guy champions in the room. I have to champion 5 other women. So I'm I have to go in with a game plan. And my team knows that whenever we talk about, year-end performance reviews, I am one of those people that are diligently working on a game plan to make sure I'm advocating, loudly for the women on my team. So I do it with no shame anymore, because I'm this is what I need to do, because I'm at the table.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. And Yvonne, I know that you're doing a lot of work, not only at Kellogg's, but through some of your external networking through working with womanhood. What are some of the things that you're seeing just in terms of trends and some of the things that are happening at Kellogg's?
I wish I could say something different than what Anne and Lila said, but they are so spot on that I would just emphasize. No, it really is the only way to make a change. When Anne says women have to elevate other women and be sponsors of other women, I will tell you, I started doing this very much at Kellogg when I realized that there was a female that was doing a piece of work, and somebody else was presenting. And I will, contact that always somebody who is more junior and say, why aren't you speaking on the work that you are doing? And by doing that, I expose that person. And if every female does that for some other females, it's almost like you are creating that network that is helping each other. We don't do that very often. Men do that a lot, and we don't. And then we also look for mentors, which is fantastic. But I love what Lila she was talking about, sponsors. I think that's much more important than having a mentor, because it's someone, or in addition of having a mentor, because it's somebody who's going to be actually helping you have a seat at the table. And even after you find your voice, being able to sit at the table and speak, sometimes it is a sponsor who can make that happen for you. So I would just pick on those two things, to be honest, Andrea, as the two key things that we can do to drive the change.
Yep.
And hey, Yvonne, if I could just plus into that, because it's an area I'm super passionate about. I have a choose to challenge for the entire group here. We are talking about all the things that we're doing and thinking about to try to impact the results. But one of the things that all of you could do for us that will make our jobs much easier in being sponsors and opening doors is when you're in a meeting, doesn't matter what the meeting is, if you're in a meeting, speak up. Have something to say. One of the things that our data has also shown us is that women don't speak up in meetings. I have no idea why, but we just don't. And so sometimes it's something that we have to be more mindful of and say, hey, I'm going to own making sure I have a reason to speak up. Maybe it's owning an icebreaker. Maybe it's running part of the agenda, whatever it is for you that makes you feel like you're engaged, find it. But if we can speak up and at least be noticed and visible, it certainly makes the jobs of those of us who are going out there saying and advocating like, hey, let's get more women to the table, it makes our jobs a little bit easier. That's all.
I love that. Yeah, definitely speak up. And, there are also times where you have to be your own advocate too. And I think that probably comes more often than not. But let's talk about times that you have had to be your own advocate. And what advice would you give to women and girls out there who are just finding their voice?
You're not naming anyone. I just spoke. Would you like me to start?
Sure, absolutely.
She has no issues finding her voice, as you can tell.
So this is another one that's super near and dear to my heart, because I get a chance to work with so many college students who are graduating either MBAs or undergraduates, and I get this question often. And so my perspective on how to kind of find that voice, or getting started, is to get really super solid on your why. I did not do a great job of that. I was chasing what I thought made sense here and there. And I was like, oh, these are the people I'm around. I'm going to do what they do, right? And they always say you're the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And then you tend to bounce from whatever is influencing you. But if we can get and spend some time on our why, what are your values? What do you stand for? What are the things that are really important to you? I know that was mentioned earlier, like really getting anchored on is this a good opportunity for you or not? Is this a part of your career plan or not? If we know our why and spend some time on that, on what's important to us, I think it'll help us find our voice. And when we find it, it'll be more authentic. It won't be a copy of somebody else, because that comes off too. How many of us have heard people who you could tell, like, do you really feel like that? Because it seems like you don't. Like, your words are saying one thing, but your energy says something different. So that's what I would recommend. Spend some time, figure out your why. And if you don't know what to do in order to figure that out, ask someone.
I think that's so powerful. And I think the other thing too is that it's okay if your why changes, because it will. And it'll change as you continue to change too. And I think that, just kind of reflecting on myself, my why has changed several times. But I think that, as long as you do have that North Star, that, you're pointed in a solid direction. So I love that. So get super solid on your why. Very good. Anne, have you had an experience where you've had to be your own advocate?
Yeah, I actually have a story that I shared. Gosh, it was at an event actually at Google Lila. It was the Girls in STEM event, and I gave a talk, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it was back to my college days. And for those that know me, I actually started out in college without I didn't know my why. I actually didn't know, what I want to do in college. I was a undeclared liberal arts major. I had no idea, and my parents, being typical Chinese parents, were like, oh, doctors are great, just be a doctor. But the thought of being in school for the next decade and having massive debt didn't really appeal to me, and blood just kind of made me really queasy. But I still remember when I went to talk to my advisor at that time in college about, it was my sophomore year, and I had to decide, I had to choose a major. I can no longer be undecided. And I was like, I just need to graduate in 4 years. I need to make a lot of money because I'm sick of being poor. And I need something that's going to open a lot of doors and really challenge me. But, most importantly, I need a above 99% job placement. She just kind of looked at me and she was like, how about computer science? She was like, it's one of our best programs. You get a job, you get paid really well. It's very challenging. I was like, all right, I'm sold. But that was pretty easy, right? She gave, at that time, I walked my transcript over and she's like, go across the street to this building, talk to the head of the department head for computer science. If he gives an approval, you're in. So I was okay, I walked my transcript over and I was able to get an appointment with him, surprisingly. And he looked at my transcript and he was like, are you sure you want to do this? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he was like, you don't have what it takes to be successful in a computer science program. He was like, do you know how selective our computer science program is? Do you know how many people, don't get in? Do you know that these people are coding since they were 10? He was like, you have no prerequisites. You're a liberal arts major. Your biology classes don't count. He was like, the only thing that may count is some of your math classes, journalism, English, none of that. He's like, you're so far behind. So he just basically pointed out all the reasons why, and this is the department head, and I'm like, well, I don't know what it is. I don't own a computer, but I want to try it out, so what's the class that I should take? And he just kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And he was like, all right, why don't you go next door and talk to one of the advisors? You pick some of the intro classes and then, try it out and then we'll talk later. So I was like, okay, well, that's not a no, I'm going to go next door and do this. So I signed up for all the entry level, CS classes. And I took my first class was Intro to Java Programming, and it opened up a whole new world for me. But I guess looking back, it was the first time that I had to advocate for myself and really say that I wanted to do this, even though this guy with a massive office and head of the department is telling me that I'll never be successful. And, throughout the years when I was there, I basically stayed under the radar. I never went back to see him. I figured I was given permission to sign up for these classes and I'm just going to do them and not even bother to go back. I mean, was he going to tell me that yes or no? I'm just going to just keep on track. And I just kind of kept my head down and did my classes. And, he was right. Everybody that was in those classes were just super smart. They've been coding since they were 10. And here I am first time coding Intro to Java, right? But it was fascinating to me. And I was just determined to be successful because I was like, well, he told me no. I just want to be just because he told me no. I think there was some part of me that was like that. And, I look back on that sometimes and was like, it's been, game changing for me. I mean, I love the career that I'm in. And I was like, I can't believe that I didn't do this earlier, right? Why wasn't I coding? Was I coding since I was 10? But because of that, I have a lot of passion for building the pipeline for girls in STEM, because I think there is a lot of girls out there like me that's just looking to discover computer science and computer engineering.
I love the comment on the chat that says success is the best revenge. That's your story, Anne.
Yeah, definitely the courage and spunk. So you've never gone back to that professor and just said, look at me now.
I think he's retired, but I was invited back to give a talk like last year in a women in computer science group. And, you know, it was interesting whenever I share that story, people just crack up, but I'm like, it was very real. And I think for all the women out there that has ever been told that you can't do something, you know, prove them wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, would be interested to hear from the other panelists and, you know, Eva Marie too, if you're out there, just about any stories or any advice to women or girls who will have to eventually find themselves in a place where they will have to be their own advocate. And how do you go about doing this? And I love that story so much, Anne. That is absolutely courageous, for sure, as somebody had said.
This is Eva Marie. Oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
Oh, no, you can go ahead.
Go ahead.
Women being nice.
So nice. We are so nice.
Well, I actually have a somewhat similar story to Anne in terms of college, but I had the wonderful benefit of my mom was a research scientist. She got her PhD in 1976. And so I basically spent my life hearing about her experiences and her challenges. And she was like on committees for getting more women in science. And I also didn't really know what programming was and kind of fell into it. But I eventually ended up getting my master's. And at that point, I had a job and I had to take this graduate class. I think it was in networking. I don't totally remember. The professor was new. He wasn't great. I wasn't doing well. And so I went to him for help. And I said, look, like your lectures, the book, the tests, they're not like all coming together for me. Like, what do you suggest I do? And he knew that I also had a liberal arts degree. And his response was, well, some people are good at reasoning about numbers and some people are good at humanities. And I was like, okay. So I left and I was very upset and I called my mom and I was like telling her about this. And she's like, listen up, this is what you're gonna do. She was like, number one, you need to find other women in computer science. Number two, you need to find other people in this class to study with. And number three, I know about the tenure process and we're gonna write a letter to the head of the department. Which all of it actually, as I've learned later and done some teaching and done some research, is really backed by science. There is a lot of science that in education, in the workplace, when people who are in the minority are marginalized, get together with other people like this event, like Women Who Code, and are able to just have a moment where they're like, I'm not alone in this. Oh, you're experiencing this too. It isn't just me. It isn't like me personally. Can be a really powerful thing. And I think also working on teams in general and having a good relationship with the people that you work with, asking for help, even if everyone on the team is a guy, which I think a lot of us spent a good percentage of our careers being in that situation. And then documenting things can also be helpful. But I always like to tell that story because I do think that there is something really powerful about finding other people so that you know that you're not alone and so that you can advocate and support each other. Even if you're not in a position where there's a woman leader, there's that story about Obama's aides who were frustrated because they couldn't speak up in meetings. And so they kind of got together and started tag teaming in meetings. If someone was interrupted, if someone said something that was, sort of given credit or a man took credit for, they would say, oh, hey, someone had to say something. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for you to look out for the people who can be your allies and advocates and be each other's advocates. Yeah.
That's such a great story. Somebody had had said, love the letter to the head. That's amazing. Eva Marie, you were going to chime in.
Yeah, I was going to add on to what Rebecca had mentioned. So the thing that I think about for younger people as they're building their career, to kind of riff on what Lila said, is being really clear on your why, but equally taking a minute. Like, so when an opportunity is presented to you, it's really okay to say, I need to think about it. Can I get back to you? I think that when you're younger in your career, you just want to be so liked, you want to be so accepted. And so you'll feel pressure in that moment. So really, anytime I knew that something was coming, I would think it through in my head 1,000 times of all of the different ways this could go. But I was always, very clear on what I wanted for myself. But if you feel like you're not clear on what you want for yourself, don't feel pressure to say yes. Prepare yourself in a situation to say, let me think about it, right? And really, gird yourself to, in the moment, being able to say, let me think about it and get back to you. I really appreciate you bringing me this opportunity. Let me think about it and come back to you. You just have to play it through your head so that you can feel confident in saying it, because a lot of how people perceive you is how you deliver the words. And I think someone had mentioned it, it's like, your presence is important, and how people perceive you is half of your battle. And so if you have to say it to yourself in the mirror, if you have to video yourself on Zoom, you need to be able to convey conviction and confidence in your direction. And that will come in time. But as a young person, I think it's really important to really, think through, how do you turn down things graciously if they don't fit your plan?
That's a very
and Eva Marie,
important thing.
I love that you mentioned that, because it's almost like you were speaking the words that were in my head. That idea of confidence, right? And when you think about advocating for yourself or speaking up, all of those things, the trigger is, do you feel confident enough to do it? And when you're doing it, are you delivering in a way that you have the presence that was mentioned? And so I often get the question, and I love that it's been already spoken to, how do I build confidence, right? Whether I've got an opportunity or not, how do I kind of build that confidence? And so again, videotaping yourself, or videotaping, that shows you, not videotaping, recording yourself. And also, one of the things that I've found that has been very interesting for myself and others, what's your commercial? How are you selling yourself on you? When was the last time you sold yourself on you? Would you buy you? And I know those are things you're like, of course I would. But sometimes the mental chatter that we tell ourselves is not as positive. And so that idea of working on yourself, working on your confidence, working on your delivery, working on your presence, and working on the thoughts that you allow to influence you, and making sure that you have your commercial that you tell yourself every day, is something that you might want to consider.
I just want to jump on that too. One thing we talk a lot about at WWCode is you are going to feel uncomfortable, and you should do it anyway. I think the reality, especially early in your career, is that it's going to be nerve-wracking to speak up. It's going to be nerve-wracking to advocate for yourself for the first time. And practice and find your crew that you can practice to, or talk to, or debrief with. And also, it's still not easy for us sometimes. I think I can say that confidently, to speak up or advocate for ourselves always. And I don't want you to go in believing that there's one day you're just going to be like, I'm amazing and I'm going to tell everyone about it, because some days you might feel that way, right? But a lot of days you're not going to feel that way. And some of it is doing it anyway, but have that safety net of practice and people around you.
Yeah, I found that one way that it's helped me build my confidence in speaking up in meetings is I'm one of those people that I tend to look at my meetings intentionally. I kind of look at them and I'm like, what are they going to talk about? Who's going to be in a room? What is my value add? I'm very intentional in thinking about well, how do I want to show up in this meeting? And I always think about myself in the sense of, am I coming to this meeting to just passively listen? Because I don't really have a role at this meeting. It's not about anything that I'm doing, but it's more informational. And then if that's the case, like, I'm like, well, how would I up that? Like, how do I, up that level of engagement? Am I going to, like, if that's the case, I always challenge myself to up the level of engagement in the meeting. Like, if I'm only attending for information, then I think about, well, what are some questions that I can potentially ask that would amplify my voice and my presence, especially in days of Zoom. I think that's very important. And I always want to make sure that I'm on camera. Like, that's very important. I think a lot of our engineers don't realize that sometimes. But then other times is that, like, even if I don't have a question, then the next level of engagement I always think about is, am I a person that can synthesize this really well? Like, am I able to kind of, a lot of times for technology, make it very simple for the audience to understand exactly what we're talking about? Like, how can I help synthesize this? Or how do I drive the next steps? Like, how do I help, like, the group? So I always think about what is the level of engagement that I can bring to the table and be very intentional about it. For me, it's like, if I'm prepared for something, I feel that much more confident in my ability to do well.
Absolutely.
So, like, so to the point where, Rebecca, when you're talking about, you're not just going to one day just show up and be like, yeah, I'm going to be like amazing in this meeting. I think it's really like thinking about like the meetings, prepping, and thinking about your role and what value you can add, right? And it's really around that, because there are some people that come in a meeting and I don't know, like, if they're not adding value, like, you probably don't want to invite them back to the next meeting, right? So I tend to just prepare, and that's helped me in terms of elevating that confidence and being able to have a presence at the meeting.
And if you're presenting, I would just add one more thing to everything that you just said, Anne. But if you are presenting, I think you said know your audience. I always pick somebody from the audience that I have seen in the past done really well in the meeting. Like, when they're presenting with confidence and they're doing really well. And then I say, any chances I can kind of share my presentation with you before the meeting? Can I just present it to you? And just by doing that, to the person that can influence that group, especially if you're presenting to executives, right? You kind of know who is the person that already has that ability to influence the team. And so by pressure testing with that person, that builds a lot of confidence. Because then you come to the meeting like, oh, he liked it. He liked it. I'm sure everybody else would like it too. So I would just add that to the list of wonderful tips that you guys just went through.
Thank you. And I wanted to make sure that we had some time for some Q&A from the audience. I know that I just saw one come in. Let's see. And feel free to unmute yourself as well if you have any questions. We'll do about, let's see, 10 minutes of questions before we wrap up. And so we have one from Marissa here. And she says that, so Marissa from Northwestern Mutual, do you have any recommendations for building rapport, establishing my brand, and exhibiting leadership capability, especially in a remote and male-dominated environment? Great question.
I'll unmute and take a stab, because I was going to connect with Marissa anyway. But I would say that, like, one of the things is really get to know your team. I think it's important that in a remote environment, like I said, for Zoom meetings, if you can be on camera, because I think there's a lot of times it's hard to be new and not on camera, because then people can't see you. They can't read the expressions on your face. It's just that much easier to develop a relationship with the people on your team. So I think that's really important, because I feel like when you have a good relationship with people on your team, work becomes easier, but it also becomes fun, right? And then you can really be more candid about how you're feeling about things and, what your thoughts are. And I would say that, male dominant, pretty early in my career, I actually wasn't very aware. I probably lacked that self-awareness to really understand that women there are not a lot of women in tech. And I didn't really see, I don't know why, but maybe it's because all throughout my, college career, there was always not a lot of women in the room. So I just kind of got used to that being the norm. And then when I started working, that was also the norm. I was always the only one, as a software engineer on a team or something. So I never really noticed it, and being kind of oblivious to it, it helped me just be me in a way, because I didn't see anything wrong with it. I didn't feel different. But once I was aware I started noticing like how guys are, in meetings and what they would say. And one of the things that helped me build my confidence also is that I used to think that everybody knew a lot more than me. But then as I started paying attention to what they were saying, I'm like, they don't actually know what they're talking about. So I'm like, my opinion is equally, as valuable. But I think when you build those relationships with your team, your voice, will come. And I like what Rebecca said about supporting each other in a meeting. I think a lot of times when you have those relationships and you have allies, they can also support you in a meeting, and that's really important.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful, and especially your comment about turning the video on. I came from a different field before this where people would always have their video on if they were on calls like this, but you're right, nobody turns them on. It's kind of like, hard to figure out who people are and just remember their faces. Some of them don't even have pictures or anything up. So I think it's helpful to hear that I should probably just turn mine on and let them see me. And it's not that weird if I can't see them.
I'll just jump in because I actually changed jobs twice during the pandemic. So I've now onboarded to a new job twice, a slightly different, I think, situation. But I think that reaching out to people, I do a lot of like one-on-ones anyway when I first started a job, but I think that in the pandemic, with everyone being remote and also everyone adjusting to being remote, some companies that's normal, but a lot it isn't. Reaching out to your teammate, to your manager, if there's someone in a meeting that had something interesting to say, I think depending on how close they are to your team, you may want to prepare differently. So your teammates, you may just want to say, hey, I want to get to know you. I would come prepared with a question. When I was in person, I used to ask people where they like to go for lunch. So that would need to be adjusted for pandemic times. But for managers, for people in other groups, you can also ask, like, how do you like to be communicated with? Like, what's your communication style? So you can make it feel purposeful and sometimes helpful for them if they've never thought about those things. But I think taking the opportunity and the time out to say, hey, could we just meet for 30 minutes or over lunch, and make sure you let them know, like, I just want to get to know people. Are you up for that? Can go a long way in just having had that connection that's more than like in a group meeting.
Thank you.
All right, this is a good one. This came in through chat. What techniques do you employ to prove you are right without saying you are right or having the last word? Is it important to prove that you are right?
Renee, is that who was to the talk? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Yvonne.
No, were you going to say something, Lila?
I was just going to say, it's interesting. My response to this might be different than what you would expect. And I'll never forget a session I went to a long time ago. And they said, and this is very basic, but they said, do you want to be right or do you want to be rich?
Both.
Which one do you want? Do you want to be right or do you want to be rich? And depending on what the scenario is, the idea around that would be, what is the benefit of being told that you're right? Now, obviously, if it's something that's very black and white, like, hey, this is supposed to be written this way or not, that's one thing. But when it comes to kind of that idea around getting acknowledged to be right or be correct, think about what's behind that, and does the outcome really matter, right? Kind of going back to what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Sometimes letting other people be right is the easiest thing in the world, assuming they're not stealing your ideas or trying to hurt you in some way. Let them be right. Does it really cost you or not? And if it's a situation where, hey, no, actually not speaking up on this or kind of looking the other way on this is going to really cost me, then kind of going back to that voice and being confident, but using our people skills. There's a book from 100 years ago called How to Win Friends and Influence People. What are your people skills like? How are you leveraging those people skills to share your point of view? Those are some things to consider when kind of figuring out, do I go further, be right, or do I stay where I am?
Right, Yvonne, you were going to say?
Yeah, I was just suggesting asking. It really depends on how important it is. You know, are you in a meeting and somebody saying something that is wrong, and you know the answer, and it's not that you want to prove you're the smartest person in the room. It's not about that, but is that a moment for you to create an impact? You know, to find your voice and be noticed. You know, create that perception. I think perception is everything. I think Eva Marie said something similar, but you know, sometimes if I'm in a meeting or in a room and somebody's saying something that I think is wrong, then rather than saying I don't agree with you or that's incorrect, I would just ask a question. And my husband actually does this a lot to prove that he's right. But he will ask you a question. He's like, "Oh, does that mean that then you can do that for this?" And it's almost like you don't know the answer, but you really know the answer. And then the person goes like, "No, you wouldn't do that." But then you kind of prove that person wasn't right without saying it. You just ask that person questions. So I can really think of an example. I literally did this in a meeting this morning, but I can't really share the example without getting in trouble. But sometimes just asking questions can help you prove you're right.
Yeah, that's a very valuable skill to have too. All right, I think we have time for just one more question, and we could talk all night. This has been a lot of fun. So we'll just take this last question here in the chat. So in preparing for meetings, I find myself feeling like I need to be over-prepared to ensure I'm not caught off guard or look unprofessional. Have you felt this pressure as well, and how have you worked through this?
Of course.
Yes, all the time.
Every time, doesn't matter how many meetings you have, just practice, practice, and practice. That's my one advice.
Yeah.
To
And
feel
then
super prepared.
Yeah, I think sometimes also like, you know, if you just don't know, like it's okay to say you don't know. Like, you know, you don't have to know everything. I think starting early in my career, I used to think that I have to know everything. But then the reality of it is that as you know, kind of learn more and more things and you get involved, your scope like broadens. Like you can't possibly know everything, right? So sometimes for a meeting, I'm just like, you know, I'm the least knowledgeable person like in this room about this. And it just takes the pressure off, right? So obviously you don't want to say that all the time, right? If it's something that, you know, everybody's expecting you to be the SME or the lead on, you should know, you know, like enough information about it to be, you know, value add to the meeting. But like sometimes you just don't have to know everything, and it's okay to admit that you may not know. It's better to do that than to like answer it incorrectly or say something incorrectly.
This one technique that might not be as commonly used, and I will tell you that depending on how much you feel super anxious and nervous about a meeting, is to meditate before your meeting. Take 10 minutes. I have done this like when I'm like in a very super important meeting, and you know, and it's like I'm presenting, and I will go into the bathroom and plug my Headspace application and just do like a 5-minute breathing or meditation, and I found that helps.
I'm going to second that, Yvonne. I think the other thing to do is just remind yourself of all the success you've had, right? So just go through like, oh, I've presented before, I've been successful before, I can, you know, like you really, your self-talk is critically important to how you're going to show up.
I know this. Just tell yourself, I know this. I know the content. I have the expertise. I got this.
And as I put in the chat, you can always play Meghan Trainor's song, "If I Was You, I'd Wanna Be Me Too," if you need to work on your confidence.
I love that. All right. Well, ladies, this has been so much fun. I thank you for your time. Everybody in the audience, thank you for your time. We have one giveaway, 2 giveaways. Blanca, what do we have left?
Yes, we have 2. So the next one is actually a 1-hour mentoring session with our very own Annie Young from Northwestern Mutual Wealth Management. And the winner of that 1-hour coaching session is Yil Sharon. Yil, are you out there? Ping us your email. And the very last raffle for today is based on a sponsorship from Kellogg's, and that's a year subscription to Blinkist Premium. And that is going to go to Bates. Congratulations, everyone.
All right, and Bates, why don't you drop your email into the chat. If anybody has won a prize and has not emailed us, you can always email our network, chicago@womenwhocode.com. Thank you to our speakers, our panelists, to everybody who attended to the Women Who Code Chicago Network for all of their hard work on this event. This was so much fun. It was, you know, the virtual event, we had some questions about how the dynamic would work, but this has been amazing.
Even without the wine, which is part of networking.
It's true. This is sans wine too. So we hope to see you at our April event, which is posted on our meetup. And thank you and have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.